my beautiful family, welcome back to another life-change infidelity story. A millionaire sees his maid being humiliated on a blind date with only $5 and her life changed forever. Have you ever witnessed someone being humiliated so cruelly that it changed the way you saw the world? I didn't mean to overhear it. That night, I was just another stranger in a dimly lit restaurant, a place where people pretended to fall in love over wine they couldn't afford. But what I saw across the room shattered something in me I didn't know was fragile. She was sitting at a corner table, her hands neatly folded, her posture too careful, as if she were trying not to take up space. Her name was Maya, my maid. The woman who polished my marble floors until they gleamed like mirrors and whispered, "Good morning, sir," every day with a quiet grace that often went unnoticed. That night, though, she wasn't the quiet maid I knew. She was just a woman, nervous, hopeful, dressed in a simple blue dress that probably cost her a month's savings. The man sitting across from her scrolled on his phone, uninterested, a smirk curling at his lips. $5? He scoffed, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "That's all you brought for dinner?" The sound of laughter, sharp, mocking, rippled through the room. Maya's hands trembled. She tried to explain, her voice barely above a whisper. I thought we'd just get coffee. I didn't realize." But he wasn't listening. He wanted an audience. "You should have told me you were broke before wasting my time," he said, leaning back in his chair, enjoying her discomfort like it was dessert. Something twisted in my chest. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. There was something unbearable about watching kindness being ridiculed. When she stood up, I noticed her eyes, not angry, not ashamed, just broken. The same eyes that had smiled politely every morning in my house now carried a silent question: why is kindness so easy to humiliate? I didn't approach her that night. I just watched her leave, clutching her worn-out purse, disappearing into the cold. But something about that moment refused to let me sleep. For years, I'd built my life on business deals and expensive silence. Yet, that $5 humiliation replayed in my mind like a story without an ending. I told myself it wasn't my business. She worked for me, her personal life was her own. But deep down, I knew better. That night had revealed something raw and human, something that money couldn't fix or ignore. And I didn't know it then, but that single evening, that cruel laughter, was about to change not just her life, but mine forever. The next morning, Maya arrived at the mansion as if nothing had happened. Her uniform was pressed, her hair tied back in its usual modest bun, her smile polite but hollow. She moved quietly through the house, dusting the same corners, arranging the same flowers, and yet, something in her rhythm had changed. I watched her from my study, pretending to review financial reports. The truth was, I couldn't stop thinking about the night before, the way she'd sat there, trying to preserve her dignity with only $5 and too much hope. "Maya," I finally called. She turned, startled, as though she'd been caught doing something wrong. "Yes, sir." Her voice was steady, but her eyes avoided mine. I wanted to ask if she was okay, but how do you ask a question like that when you've never learned to sound sincere? "I need the guest room aired out," I said instead. Cowardly words. She nodded and left, her steps light, controlled. All day, the sound of her quiet movements filled the house, the soft clatter of dishes, the faint hum of her song, the sigh of doors closing. She worked like someone trying to keep the world from falling apart by sheer will. That evening, as I stood by the window, I saw her leaving through the side gate, clutching her purse again, the same one from last night. The city was cruel to people like her. It devoured hope in small, unseen ways. For reasons I couldn't explain, I followed her. She boarded a crowded bus, and I drove behind, feeling both foolish and strangely compelled. She got off near a small bakery and entered a narrow alley that led to a low-rent building. I parked nearby and watched as she handed a paper bag, bread, perhaps, to an elderly woman sitting on the steps. The woman smiled, touching Maya's face with a trembling hand. That's when it struck me, she hadn't spent that $5 on herself. She'd spent it feeding someone else. I leaned back in my car seat, shame washing over me. I'd built a life so high above struggle that I'd forgotten what quiet generosity looked like. The next day, I left an envelope on her cleaning cart. Inside were a few $100s, an impulsive apology for the world's cruelty. But when I returned that evening, the envelope was still there, unopened. She had simply written one line across the top. "Sir, I don't take money I haven't earned." For the first time in years, I didn't know what to say. That single sentence revealed more about character than all the business partners I'd ever known. And for reasons I couldn't yet admit, it made me want to know who Maya really was. Days turned into weeks, and yet that untouched envelope haunted me. It sat on my desk like a mirror, reflecting everything I didn't want to see about myself: entitlement, guilt, and the uncomfortable truth that kindness couldn't be bought. Maya continued her work with quiet precision. She never faltered, never complained, never mentioned the blind date again. But sometimes, when she thought I wasn't watching, her gaze would drift, not in sadness, but in distance. Like someone who had learned to expect very little from the world, and therefore could no longer be disappointed. One afternoon, rain began to fall, the heavy, deliberate kind that turns daylight into dusk. The staff had gone home early, leaving the house strangely still. I found Maya in the library, closing the tall windows before the wind could scatter the papers on my desk. "You can leave early too," I said softly. She hesitated, looking out at the storm. "I'll wait till it slows down. The buses stop running when it rains this hard." Something about that answer, simple, resigned, unsettled me. I nodded toward the armchair. "Then at least sit. No one's watching." She blinked, surprised, but obeyed. The silence between us was thick, filled with things neither of us knew how to say. "Maya," I began, unsure how to sound gentle, "that man from the restaurant, was he someone you knew long?" Her lips curved into the faintest smile. "No. A friend set it up. She said I should try to meet someone not afraid of a woman who works hard." "And was he?" I asked. Her eyes met mine, calm, steady, unguarded. "He was afraid of everything except himself." The simplicity of her words struck deeper than I expected. I realized then that she wasn't broken, she was simply used to surviving without expecting anyone to notice. She stood to leave, but something made me speak again. "You don't deserve to be treated like that, Maya. Not by anyone." Her expression softened, almost pitying. "Sir, people treat you based on what they think you're worth. It's not their fault if they can't see clearly." Then she turned and left, her figure framed by the rain-blurred window, leaving me alone with a truth that refused to let me rest. For years, I had believed I understood value, measured in profits, status, luxury. But for the first time, I began to question what worth really meant. And without realizing it, I'd already crossed a line, not one of class or propriety, but of emotion. Because I no longer saw Maya as my maid. I saw her as the mirror I'd spent my entire life avoiding. It happened one evening, a week after the storm. I had just returned from a meeting, still wearing the mask of composure that money demands. But the house was unusually quiet. The faint scent of disinfectant lingered in the air, and I found Maya in the kitchen, sitting on a stool with her head in her hands. Her shoulders trembled. It was the first time I'd ever seen her cry. "Maya?" My voice came out softer than I intended. She straightened instantly, wiping her face, trying to compose herself. "I'm sorry, sir. I shouldn't." "What happened?" For a moment, she hesitated, caught between silence and surrender. Then, with a voice that cracked under the weight of exhaustion, she said, "They're evicting my mother from the building. I've been trying to pay the rent, but they raised it again. I can't keep up." The admission hit me harder than expected. Not because of her struggle, but because of her pride. How long she must have carried this burden in silence, still showing up here every morning, still smiling through it. "How much do you need?" I asked quietly. She looked at me as if I had insulted her. "Please don't, sir. I'm not asking for help. It's not charity," I insisted. "It's decency." She shook her head, her eyes glistening. "Decency ends when money enters the room. I've seen it too many times." The truth of that statement silenced me. I had lived my entire life inside rooms built by money, and maybe, in some way, they had shut me out of my own humanity. I stepped closer, unsure what I was doing. "Then let me help differently," I said. "Come work in my office. I'll train you. You're sharp, thoughtful, wasted here." Her eyes widened. "You trust me with your business?" "I already do," I said simply. "You take care of everything I own." She looked at me for a long moment, studying me, perhaps searching for the lie she expected to find. But there wasn't one. I meant every word. Tears welled again, but this time they weren't born of pain. "No one's ever said that to me before," she whispered. For a fleeting second, something unspoken passed between us, a current of understanding that blurred the lines between gratitude and something deeper. It scared us both. She finally nodded. "I'll think about it." As she left the room, her reflection lingered in the glass door, a woman who had been humiliated for $5, now holding the power to decide her own worth. And I realized the truth I'd been avoiding: helping her wasn't about redemption. It was about recognition, of her strength, and of the emptiness my wealth had never filled. Maya accepted the offer 3 days later. She arrived at my office in a crisp white blouse, a second-hand notebook clutched to her chest, her eyes steady but cautious. I introduced her to my team as the new assistant, though the truth was, I had no idea what her title should be. She was not someone you could define with labels. At first, the others whispered, curious about the maid who suddenly sat beside the boss. But Maya never faltered. She asked questions, took notes, and learned faster than anyone I'd ever hired. Her instincts were sharp, her honesty sharper. Within weeks, she was running schedules, correcting reports, even challenging decisions I'd made with quiet confidence. One evening, as we reviewed quarterly numbers, I caught her smiling faintly at the screen. "What is it?" I asked. She shrugged. "I was just thinking, a few months ago, I was counting coins to buy bread. Now I'm balancing accounts worth millions." Her words weren't proud, they were grateful, but grounded. That humility was what made her extraordinary. I smiled back. "And you're doing it better than I ever did." She laughed softly, but there was something wistful in her tone. "It's strange, isn't it? How quickly life can change, not because of miracles, but because someone finally sees you." That night, after she left, I sat alone in the office long after the lights dimmed. Her words echoed through the emptiness. Someone finally sees you. For years, I'd been surrounded by people who saw only my wealth, not my loneliness, not my humanity. But Maya had looked past all that. And in doing so, she taught me something money never could: value is not what you own, but what you give meaning to. Months passed. Maya moved her mother into a small apartment near the city. The laughter that used to sound hollow now carried warmth. The last time I visited, her mother clasped my hand and said, "She smiles now. You gave her wings, not money." But the truth was the opposite: Maya had given me wings. One afternoon, she came to my office, holding a resignation letter. My heart sank before she spoke. I've been offered a position at a nonprofit, she said gently. They help women who've been through what I have. I think it's where I belong. I wanted to stop her, but instead, I nodded. You were never meant to stay here, Maya. You were meant to lead. She smiled, that same calm, resilient smile she'd worn since the day I met her. Thank you, sir. For seeing me. When she left, the office felt larger, emptier, but also brighter. I walked to the window and looked out at the city. The rain had started again, gentle this time, almost forgiving. And for the first time in my life, I understood, wealth isn't measured in what you keep, it's measured in who you lift. Maya had come into my life as a maid. But she left as the reminder of everything truly priceless. She had once been humiliated for having only $5. Now she carried a heart richer than any fortune I'd ever known. Maya didn't just change her life, she changed mine. Because sometimes, it only takes one act of quiet courage to remind the world what true worth means. Please subscribe our channel for more stories.